Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 138, which is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. So let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week, and we have 23 comics this week, so it's a good amount of comics. So let's get started. Number 23 is Santeria, the Goddess Kiss, issue 1, which is a new Aspen book. You know, haven't been really liking a lot of Aspen books this year, I feel. I tried out Fathom Blue, didn't love the miniseries, and then I tried out this issue and really didn't like it. The artwork did not work. It felt very crumbly, needed a lot more detail. The colors collided. Some of the colors, like some of the panels seemed like it was all the same color, and not really detailed to certain, like, things in the panels. It was all, like, same color. And then the story was just really boring. I would say 3/4 of it is exposition of this goddess, and you didn't really get to know who the main characters are. I just was not feeling this book. I was very bored reading it, and I gave this 1 star. So that's number 23. Moving on to number 22, which is Green Arrow, issue 50. Same werewolf wonderfulness for the story. Yeah, I do not like this werewolf plot for Green Arrow. I don't think it fits. He's still very out of character. The whole Deathstroke thing felt random that he was in this book. And just I didn't feel a lot to feel attached to in this issue. And it was issue 50, a landmark issue, and it didn't really feel that way. It just felt like here's a random issue what is supposed to be Green Arrow. So I gave this 2 stars. Wasn't really feeling this issue. I guess it was cool seeing Miko in this book a little bit more. I guess it was cool to see Deathstroke, some familiarity of the DC universe. But Green Arrow is still totally out of character here. So I gave that 2 stars. And that is number 22. Moving on to number 21, which is Web Warriors, issue 5, which I was really disappointed with, honestly. I've liked the arc overall, but I do feel like it was starting to get a little two-dimensional with the villains. I expected more with the Electro gang from the beginning of the arc. But what upset me here is that it felt really rushed, and we have the disappearance of Mayday and Spider UK. They are stuck in the dome, and Anya just closed it up. She's like, I don't care, just close up that spider dome. This is me doing web shooters, closing up the spider dome. So she closes it up, and then everyone's kind of worried. It's like, hey, you know, they're still there. It's like, well, they could sacrifice themselves. And they do. They sacrifice themselves. It seems like they find a way to get out of there, but it was very rushed. You didn't really get to see the scene of when they were, I would say, try to escape. I would have liked to see that. And then the reactions to their death/disappearance was very lackluster. Anya's like, what can you do, pretty much? And then Uncle Ben is saying, well, you know, I gotta protect Mary Jane and Benji. It's like, no, not that I have to tell them that their daughter is missing. It's like, well, I gotta protect them. Protect them from what? What's attacking them? Why does he have to protect them? I'm very confused by that. So yeah, I just thought it was rushed and lackluster, like I said. I was very disappointed with this issue. Web Warriors issue 5, 2 stars, and that is number 21. Now we're moving on to number 20, which is Black Canary, issue 9. This was probably the definition of a filler issue. It starts out with a blurb saying that this is like a missing adventure of, this is not exact words, so I'm just saying it's a missing adventure of Black Canary's music days. And we see that, you know, it's just a concert, pretty much. She was doing this for this young girl. She was doing a concert. Of course, her past, Black Canary's past catches up with her in this issue. She has some fights, and that's the issue. It felt very, very fillerish. And the adventure, I guess, was okay, but honestly, I really didn't like Black Canary music days, so to go back to that, I was like, oh, I didn't really need this issue. But it was disappointing, too, because this is the writer of We Can Never Go Home, and it was a little disappointing that this was the issue that we got. So, very fillerish, something you could totally skip if you didn't really like the music days of Black Canary. If you're not really interested in getting a missing episode of Black Canary. So I gave that 2.5 stars. The artwork was okay, though. I thought the art, even though it was kind of thin-lined, it was okay. It was kind of lanky, but Coloring was pretty good. So I give that 2.5. That is number 20. So now we're moving on to number 19, which is Lords of the Jungle, issue 1. So I got this issue because I really enjoyed Vampirella issue 1 a couple of weeks ago that came out of Dynamite. So I picked up another issue 1 from Dynamite just to see what it's all about, and this one was a little less interesting. It concentrates on Sheena. I don't know much about the character, but it concentrates on her, and it's pretty much about not pollution, but like companies, you know, breaking down trees and her fighting it. I'm like, that's really generic. That's really predictable. And then there's some time travel thing and Tarzan being in like London. So I think you might be more of a fan of this if you've read them in the past. Wasn't a great jumping on point, and at the same time just did not grab me. But the artwork was pretty okay, so I gave it 2.5 stars. Alright, so moving on to number 18, which is the 13th Artifact one-shot, which is actually, you know, a top talent thing from Top Cow, where they get new writers and artists to make a story, and they release a one-shot whoever wins the contest. So, of course, I want to support this. I love supporting creator-owned stuff and indie creators, especially new creators. This very much reminded me of, like, Sean Murphy-style artwork, which I'm not, you know, a huge fan of how dark and like how many lines are on the face. But I will say this issue opened up really well. It hooked me and I'm like, oh cool, alright, so this character just lost her, you know, love. Now she's going into this toxic world. Cool. So by the halfway point though, kind of lost me. Once they actually got into the information of the 13th artifact and the people who live there, that's when it kind of got less interesting. And by the end of the issue she dies. So I'm like, oh. Alright. So it kind of felt like a waste by then. So that's why I was kind of like on the fence with the issue. Still, I do think you might want to get it just to support the indie creator, but I thought the first half of the issue was a lot better than the second half. So I gave that 3 stars. And that was number 18, I'm pretty sure. Yes, so that is number 18. And now we're moving on to number 17, which is Extraordinary X-Men, issue 8, and this is the start of the Apocalypse Wars. And the problem with, I think, starting an arc like this is that I still don't really feel connected to the team. I still don't really feel that connection, feel the hook of the series at all yet. And that's what kind of took me out of this story. It's like, cool, you got the 4 horsemen in the end of the issue, because obviously trying to connect it more to the movie coming out, and that, you know, Colossus gets trapped, so we'll see how that works out. And I like that, you know, there's this possibility of getting new mutants, but again, we've seen that a lot of times already. And then the secondary stories with Illyana and this young girl, and going to Doctor Strange, seeing more about the young girl's magic, and then finding out Illyana's being attacked by something magical, which I enjoyed that story, honestly, more, but I don't like the artwork. I don't really like her lips that much, like her face, her facial expressions here. I feel like it's very puffy, so I think some of the facial features could have been a little bit better for the secondary story, but you know, it wasn't a bad issue like Ramos's artwork in the first story, but it didn't blow me away, and I think that's more because I still haven't had a hook for this series totally. So I gave that 3 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 16, which I am not going to give a full-on review. I did that in my in-depth review, so you go check that out. But I'm just going to say if it's worth picking up or not, and that's Legends of Tomorrow issue 1. So now you know why I'm not going to give, like, 4 stories other issues, but I'll just say that all 4 were pretty solid. They're all good stories, but none of them really had a hook. None of them ended where I'm like, oh my god, I need to pick up the next issue. They're all just kind of were there, and they were good stories, but they didn't blow me away. And I guess the stories I enjoyed the most was Sugar and Spike and the Firestorm story. But again, the ending didn't really blow me away. But the best I would say is probably Firestorm, because I have more of a connection to that character. But is it worth $8? Only if you really like these characters. If you don't, I think you could skip it. It's not like the best jumping on point to these characters, but I'll probably get issue 2 digitally if it's not that big of a week just to see where it goes, but I wasn't blown away by issue 1. So I gave that 3 stars. Alright, so that was number 16. So now we're moving on to 15, which this book is a lot lower than usual, and that is Huck in one of the things. So, that is Huck issue 5. I didn't love this issue because I felt like it was pretty slow. It's Huck and his mother being in the glass trapped, or, in the glass jail for most of the issue, and it's most of the KBG talking. And by the end of the issue, you do have some cool connection between Huck and his mother, and he's able to get out of the cell, but that's literally the end of the issue. So I thought it was a really quick issue, and not a lot happening, for the issues. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. Artwork is pretty good, but I definitely read better issues of Huck. So Huck issue 5 gets 3 stars. And that's number 15. So now we're moving on to number 14. And that is 8 Seal issue 4, which is actually the penultimate issue, which doesn't really feel that way, and that's why it's a bit lower. But I still like the series. The artwork's a bit plain, but I like that it's a psychological thriller where you don't know if the president's wife is going crazy or if there's this mystical thing behind it. And it seems like there is this mystical thing behind it. And it's going to take one issue to explain that all. But what I also like is that it's not obvious to put her into a mental hospital because she's so much in the front and in the public eye that you can't do that, or else, the president might not get reelected, or, politics. So I like that. It's not the easy way out, that you do have to handle this situation, even though she's like cutting her throat and doing all these crazy stuff. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Still enjoying the series, but hopefully they don't rush the ending for issue 5, because I didn't know it was a mini-series. I thought it was an ongoing. Alright, so moving on to number 13, which is Captain Marvel issue 3. Pretty good issue. What I like is that Captain Marvel is sick in this issue, and we don't really know why her power is being taken kind of from her, or why it's decreasing. And by the end of the issue, we find out she's having visions of the person who gave her powers, the original Captain Marvel, and it's all connected to that story. Now, the lackluster part of this series, I feel, is the supporting cast. I think they really need to give them personalities more. I think that's the biggest thing of why this hasn't gone over like 3.5 stars. But I love Anka's artwork. I think it fits really well. And like I said, I like the originality of what they're doing with this Kree story and with Captain Marvel's origin story, or connecting to her origin story at least. So Captain Marvel issue 3 gets 3.5 stars. Alright, so now we're up to number 12, which is All New X-Men, issue 6, which I guess I'm enjoying this series a bit more than Extraordinary X-Men. This was not a perfect issue. It's still very separated. Still don't really feel the team is really together. But I did like 3 out of, I guess, the 5 stories going on here. We have Cyclops, who's been stolen by Toad, which I don't care. Which is weird. I thought Toad was a good guy now, but I guess he's not anymore. And then Iceman's story really didn't have much in this issue. Beast, I could care less about too. But I think the 3 really interesting stories was Edie, Angel, and Laura. Laura, because she's kind of figuring out why Angel's been so upset but doesn't really want to admit it to him. And then Angel really showing off, trying to show Laura, hey, this is why I'm angry, because you act like this. And then he goes, completely overboard to try to defeat the Blob. And then Edie, what I really like is like her decision if she's Catholic or not anymore, if she believes in God. And I really like her dialogue about that, talking to Iceman, saying that of course I believe in God, or else I wouldn't be so angry at him, and I'm just trying to figure out my faith, and I'm glad not to be defined by it anymore, but I still have my faith. So I like that with Edie, and I'm still loving the Laura and Angel stuff. I think that's the most interesting part of the series. But again, half of the story is still not very interesting. So hopefully those characters will get better stories in the future. And artwork's good. I like Bagley's artwork. I don't think it's his best work on a series, but I think it's pretty good. Even though sometimes Cyclops kind of looks like is unproportionate, his visor. And I'll show you an example of that. Let me see if I can find it. Because there's one where he's like laying down and it looked like his visor was on his forehead. and he didn't really have a forehead. I guess this is one example of that. It's not the image I was looking at, but yeah, the visor I thought was a little bit close to his head. There was another image where it's like really obvious, which I wish I could find, but I can't. But All New X-Men issue 6, it gets 3.5 stars. There's definitely some interesting story here, but still not blowing me away, the series. Still, the best issue was that focus on Angel and Laura's relationship. Okay, so now we're moving on to number 11, which is Injustice Gods Among Us Year 5, Issue 6. So this is still a series that, I don't know if Year 5 needed to happen, but I like the story between Bizarro and Superman. Seeing that Superman sees this fake Superman and Bizarro playing the hero, or at least trying to in a lot of ways. And artwork's really well done. I thought it had good action. I thought this issue fleshed out Lex and Clark's relationship well, that Clark is really the superior one in this issue, and I feel like, I don't want to say Lex is afraid of Clark, but I think their friendship is being tested here. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting storylines, but still not wowing me, this series, and still hasn't progressed the plot in a really long time. So that's something that I think is lackluster about Year 5 so far. But yeah, I gave this issue, I gave it 3.5 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 10, which is Batman and Robin Eternal, issue 24. And I will say the beginning of the issue doesn't have a lot. It's mostly us seeing like the other Bat family fighting people around the world. It's set up to that. So that's half of the issue. But then the second half, we actually do get into the Mother stuff. Mother trying to control Harper, and by the end of the issue, wanting her to kill Cassandra, which is pretty powerful, because we know the things that's been building up with this series is that Cassandra killed Harper's parents, or at least mother. And I also love Stephanie in this issue too. It wasn't a lot, but she just kind of showed off and saying, yeah, you know, I'm not the strongest person, but I have other stuff, and that's totally Stephanie. So I enjoyed the little scene she had in this issue, and I would say that's the most interesting stuff. The other things is just mostly, hey, Bat family, fight. So that was half of the issue, and that's why it's not as high on the list, but still a good issue, and I like the ending, and finally we're getting to see the story progress. You know, that's what happens with these weekly series. You sometimes have issues that are a little lackluster, but once you get to the end, usually I guess they're pretty good. So I gave that 3.5 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to we're up to number 9, which I think is a lot higher than usual, and that is Titan's Hunt, issue 6, which was a close 4-star book, but still didn't quite make it there. But we're getting into why you know, we have these people trying to attack the Teen Titans, and what their past is, how they're connected, that they knew each other 5 years ago. So we're starting to get that history. But my favorite part was definitely with Karen, and finding out what happened to her husband. And then we have this guy saying, are you a metahuman? So it makes you question, is Karen a good guy or a bad person? Because supposedly these metahumans get their powers because from the Mr. Twister by, you know, being that was their gift, was the gift of being a metahuman. So is she betraying Mal? I'm curious about that. So there's definitely a lot more interesting story here. Artwork is average, I would say, but the action scenes are really well done. So yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. Like I said, it's close to 4 stars. Still not there, but I liked it. I liked that we got more information in this issue. We're getting close to the end, too. Alright, so number 8 is Powerman and Iron Fist, issue 2, which is a lot higher than issue 1. I enjoyed this issue. Now, I still don't really love the Heroes for Hire references, I guess, because I'm just not a Heroes for Hire fan. I didn't really read those books. So, the ending I didn't really get as much, because I don't really know the character that well, but not that I hated it. I just need to learn more about these characters, and hopefully I will with this series. But the best part is Powerman and Iron Fist. I love their friendship, and just some of the quirky things that Iron Fist says to Powerman, and Powerman saying, "We're done, we're over." And I love his little thing about cursing, and he's trying not to. He's like, says faddle fiddle, whatever he's saying. I think it's hilarious that they're keeping that running joke. But another favorite part of mine is the peanut gallery with Spider-Woman. In Spider-Woman, it's really random. Probably wouldn't even need to be in the issue, but it was hilarious. Where you would have to maybe read it a second time, but you notice Spider-Woman and Spider-Woman are commentating on how there's two power men and that they're just like looking at these guys fight, and they're like, oh, why does that make sense? There's two power men, you know, what does that mean? And like, why is there two of these people? And then you realize Spider-Gwen, Spider-Woman, and Spider-Woman are talking about this. Two people with the same name. So I love that peanut gallery scene. It was a page, but it was so worth it. Again, wasn't even needed in the issue, but I loved it. Yeah, the best part of this issue is definitely the friendship between Luke and Danny, and that's what should be the best part. Now, the plot stuff could be a little stronger, I think, and hopefully with the issues to come, it will be. But I thought this was an improvement from issue 1, and I can't wait to see Powerman and Iron Fist actually admit that they're a team again. And I like the little panel with Jessica yelling at Luke, and Luke having to use, like, the Prius. I thought that was pretty funny. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in this issue, so I gave Powerman and Iron Fist 4 stars. And that is number 8. So we're moving on to number 7. Which is Poison Ivy, The Cycle of Life and Death, issue 3. Now, I will say there's some weirdness in this book. The weird storyline that totally does not fit is Poison Ivy's babies. I don't get it. It's a little weird to me, and that's the part where I'm like, has this story lost its steam? I don't know. But then you get into the actual mystery story, and then seeing Poison Ivy team up with Catwoman a little bit in this issue, seeing her make a new friend from her lab. Those are the interesting parts, and the baby thing doesn't really happen too much in the issue. It still just doesn't, I don't know what to really say about it, but the artwork's really great for the series, and like I said, I like that they're introducing us to new characters, and I like that, you know, Pamela is still a villain, and you totally see that here. She, you know, tries to kill somebody here, but she's trying not to get caught at the same time. It's like, yeah, I didn't kill these people. Well, I'm still okay with killing people. So it's a cool mystery going on, and I still really like the series, even if it does have a weird B-plot. So I gave it 4 stars. Still enjoying the miniseries, and still think it's a great Poison Ivy mini. That could get you interested into the character. Alright, so number 6 is Grimm Fairy Tales, issue 120. Probably my favorite Zenescope book. I will say this issue's a bit wordy, but there's a lot of good stuff going on here. We have Shadow Girl's return, working with the government, and seeing how the world kind of sees her, and where she's gotten her powers from. Really like that commentary. And of course, the Other Realm Knight trying to find her and her boyfriend. And then the other stories with Haley and Ali, where, you know, Ali is Wolf talks to Ali, which I love Wolf's characterization, just saying. I loved his development from the beginning of the series to the end, where he's trying to be a good friend, but trying to tell Ali the truth and say, hey, you know, is it right what you're doing with Haley? Don't you think you should make her rest? And then Haley doesn't really want to be here anymore. And it's a really interesting story where you thought Haley wanted to be alive, and she loves Ali, and that's why she doesn't want to say no. And Ali just doesn't want to be lonely, and it's such a beautiful, I guess, love story in a lot of ways, but also a tragedy. So I'm loving that story, and I've been loving that since the beginning. So it's a good story. I will say some of the artwork, when there's like more than 2 people on the panel, there's times where they don't have faces, so there definitely could be more detail, but I like it when it's up close. The artwork's pretty good. Coloring's good, so I gave it 4 stars. I'm really enjoying Grimm Fairy Tales, and like I said, it's my favorite Zenescope book. So that's number 6. Now we're moving on to number 5, which is Silk. Now I will say the artwork still could be a little bit better for the series. I think it's a little lanky at times. There's one scene where Cindy like has her hands up and her hands are not totally proportionate, but you get used to it, and the story was really well done here. It's Cindy kind of getting back to normal life, figuring out she does have anger issues, and going to her psychiatrist, But what I like is the beginning of the issue where we get to see she has a meeting with Mockingbird, thinks she's in trouble. She's like, oh, why is the door not open? She's like, I must be in trouble. And then she says the same thing to J. Jonah, and you know why she doesn't want the door closed, because of how much time she was in that bunker. So I love that psychological aspect. It's such a small detail, but it was really great that they added that. And it's cool to see Cindy interact with pretty much all of her supporting characters. Her work friends, J. Jonah Jameson, which I love her relationship with JJJ, and the Mockingbird, but also like her getting like a soft spot for Black Cat, like seeing that. I love the line where Black Cat says there are no streets. Like, I'm not a good guy and I'm not a bad guy, and we shouldn't be defined by that. And I love that line, and where Cindy's kind of starting to understand that. Maybe Black Cat has just had a horrible past, and she's starting to see that, but Mockingbird's like, no, you're getting too close to this now. And Cindy kind of is getting close to it. So I enjoyed this issue, and her exploding at her psychiatrist, and really seeing the anger, and her almost killing someone in the issue, and her psychiatrist saying, you know, how did you feel about it? And she says good, and she's like, oh my god, I felt good. This is bad. So there's some really interesting moments to look in Cindy's head in this issue, and that's why I really liked. And even though again the artwork wasn't the best in the issue, I think the story was really well done. It was a good way to enter us into a new arc and getting us into the Spider-Woman arc. So Silk issue 6 gets 4 stars. And that's number 5. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 4, which is International Iron Man issue 1. Which I was surprised by this. When I opened it up and I read the story, I'm like, well, this is not the story I was expecting. I was expecting like an espionage, like Mary Jane with a gun, like James Bond book. It's not what we get. We kind of get a flashback issue. And I was like, oh, okay. And I really liked it. I liked the flashback of learning who this new character is. She's like this privileged girl who knows how to fight. She had a bodyguard, and one night she went out with Tony. They knew each other from college. She went out with her family, and her dad died, and she had to kill someone. And then we go into the present, where Cassandra's like evil, I guess? Or at least doesn't like Tony. And you're like, well, how does she end up there? And it made me really interested in her story, and that's what an issue should do with these type of new characters. Get you interested in the new character you're going to be following throughout the series. Now, after reading this origin story, I'm really interested to learn more about Cassandra. So, I gave this 4.5 stars. Now, I will say I guess the bad part of this issue is the art style for Tony. I don't think this was the best design for Tony as a youngin in college. And also, I think the artwork was a little bit lackluster in the beginning of like this party scene here, but it definitely gets better and more detailed as the issue goes on and it improves. So I like that. Like, these scenes were really well done. Maybe because it was a little brighter and less chaos in the issue, but it does get better, the artwork. So I gave it 4.5 stars. I was pleasantly surprised by something I didn't really expect from the series. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 3, which is Spider-Woman issue 5. I love this series. It's definitely one of those books I always put on the top of my pile because of how much I'm loving this new volume. And this whole issue is about Jessica being a mother. And I like that it's her not being ready to go to her job, her adjusting to this new life, and knowing this is a new chapter and life will never be the same, but that's okay. You actually get the discovery of who the father is, that there wasn't really a father, that she did go to a sperm bank and have a child. But at first she thought she was pregnant, it was a false alarm, and she was upset, and she wanted a child, and now so Jessica, I thought. It worked. And I love that it was her talking to Carol about it. It was like, yeah, you have to tell your best friend that more than anyone else in your life for Jessica. So I enjoyed that moment where she's just like blow drying her hair and she's telling the story to Carol that we've been waiting for 5 issues for. But you know what I love about the series too is the facial expressions are so well done. Love the artwork here. You can see in the first panel the bags under Jessica's eyes. There's so much great detail here. I really love that opening scene where Jessica is explaining her whole life story to her to Patsy and Jen, and they're like, well, that's the reason why you don't tell your friends that don't have kids about what it actually is about to have kids. So I enjoyed that. It's just cool to see Jessica as a mom, and of course I'm excited to see how she balances her life as a mother and a hero, and we really see that she will balance that in the future issues. And I like how her friends help. Like Porcupine's like the best babysitter, and Ben like sneaks, hey, this is a mission. You don't have to do it. You could do it. So I liked how he snuck in to allow Jessica to be a hero again and adjust to, you know, her new life. I would say the only negative here is that I think, you know, there's some repetitive stuff with her talking about her child, but it was still a blast to read. So I gave Spider-Woman issue 5 4.5 stars. And that's number 3. So now we're moving on to number 2, which is Superman American Alien issue 5, and I love this series so far. There really has not been a bad issue of Superman American Alien, and added plus, my favorite artist is doing the artwork here, and it's so bright and great, and I love the facial expressions for Clark here. And it's Clark being Superman, kind of before he was Superman. If you watch Smallville, it's like the blur version of him. And it's Lois opening up saying, who is this guy? Why is he not marketing himself? And then Clark's telling Lois, maybe it's just him being a good Samaritan. And at first, Clark is just doing things like getting people out of burning buildings, not defeating big monsters. But then he encounters Parasite. And he questions what to do as a hero now. Does he really want to do this anymore? And then he talks to Lois, and Lois is like, we need this guy. We need hope. And then this makes Clark say, yeah, we do. And he finally calls himself Superman by the end of the issue, even though Lex Luthor plays a big part in this issue too. So yeah, I really enjoyed this issue. I love that it's all about hope. It's not about people being scared of Superman. There's that moment when Parasite is there, and the police officer is like, yeah, come with us. You're going to help us. And I love that. You know, in other, I guess, more modern comics, be like, no, we're scared of you. Go away. And it's so much brighter. And then Lois even mentioning about hope. It's like, yeah, we need a hero like that. And she kind of admits that, and I love it. And again, artwork fits so well for a story like this. So Superman American Alien, another great addition, and I gave that 4.5 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 1. I am opening up another bottle of water so I could drink that. Hold on. Now we're going on to number 1, which is Astonishing Ant Man issue 6. That is a no-brainer. I love this issue. I think it's going to be a contender for my favorite issue of the year. It's everything I wanted with a Cassie issue. It explains why Cassie, I guess, has been ignored in the series. Like, you know, the latest volume, she was kind of played as this damsel in distress. And you find out it's not her being a damsel in distress for Scott's story. It's for her own. A heartbreaking part in this issue is seeing, in the beginning, Cassie gets in a fight with these mean girls. They're saying something bad about her. So she literally gets in a fist fight with them. So it's not revealed until the end of the issue that she got in a fist fight and lost. Normal people. She knows 6 types of martial arts, but she lost to these regular people. And she missed being a hero. She misses her powers. And so yeah, that was definitely a heartbreaking part. And that's why that damsel in distress story, I feel like, is more for her. Because, like, she couldn't fight back because she didn't know how. And now she wants to become a hero. She wants to be, you know, she wants to be strong again. She wants to be invulnerable, but she never was. And I love that, you know, this issue has Kate and Cassie. It's really Kate trying to support Cassie, which is totally needed. And Cassie, airing out her feelings, finally, about her death, about losing her powers, and not wanting that. And then Kate says, you're not invulnerable, that's why you died, and that's why people are being overprotective. But another aspect I really like, which I forgot to mention in my in-depth review, is the difference between their age. We see that Cassie really, and Nick Spencer does such a great job at not totally spelling out that Cassie is 15 years old or 16 years old, still in high school, and being able to be grounded, and Kate has the liberty to be a young 20-year-old where that's who Casey should have been. You know, she should be a young 20-year-old hanging out with Kate. And I think Cassie is upset about that, and I love how they spell that out in this issue. And I think that's why Kate was such a good guest star for this issue too, and for Cassie to explain her feelings with. But by the end of the issue, we do get to see Cassie is tired of this, and she goes undercover to become a supervillain, but then finds out that the whole situation of her being kidnapped and Darren Cross stealing her heart. So now she's out for revenge to steal something for the Henchman X app. And she's becoming a lot like her father by stealing something, you know, getting her abilities by stealing something. That is something Scott would do. So I enjoyed that. And I love her new identity, which is, we have Stinger is her new identity. And if you guys don't know, I actually have the trade. That is from the MC2 universe. I don't think Stinger's in this issue, but in this trade. But she actually is Cassie Lang from Spider-Girl's universe. So they use the same exact design from the MC2, which I totally geeked out of. So I'm really excited to see what they do with Cassie and how Scott reacts to all this, and I'm glad that we finally got that story. So 100%, this is my pick of the week. I gave that 5 stars. Let me know in the comments below what was your pick of the week and your worst pick of the week and everything in between. This is Comic Uno. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Of course, I'll have Comic Uno episode next week, and I will see you guys later. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. I'll see you guys later. Bye.